This is too entertaining. Let me. We're back again for a special bonus edition of 4020 Not Live. Phil is here from his study. You can see I'm in front of the curtains, much beloved by the Rugby League media. Phil, introduce our guest. I'm not quite sure how to introduce him.
Well, celebrity, I think, is a way of introducing him. Film producer, comedian, director, raconteur, columnist, all-round good egg. Just hoping that the picture behind me on the wall of the 1978 Challenge Cup final isn't going to upset him too much.
Before my time, Phil.
Thank you. I now feel old. Renowned St Helens fan, which is why we've got him on. Friend of the stars, if not a star himself. The great Ian Boldsworth. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Phil. Thank you for having me. And Richard as well. You look like you just woke up, Richard.
Well, I feel like it, but that's how I feel like most of the time. It's like the people don't know. I was going to go with polymath, which is a word I only learned last year was it this year when Clive James died? I can't remember, but that was a word everyone used to describe him because he did so many different things. So I like that word. So I'm going to use it to describe you, Ian. Or as you describe yourself, the eloquent Saints fan, which I know will upset some other Saints fans, which is always good.
But there's truth in it, though, isn't there?
I think the only thing Ian hasn't done is write poetry, if you're comparing him to Clive James. And he probably has done that on birthday cards.
I haven't. But I could probably do it, I reckon. I've got a portfolio career. That's the phrase I learned recently, portfolio career, which means you're not brilliant at anything, but you've got loads of things that you do.
I might steal that one as well. Ian, it's grand final week. How excited are you as a Saints fan? I knew the answer to this, that's why I asked.
I'm not. No, I'm actually not. And it's do you know what? I've come quite nicely to terms with that. I think I'm not excited about it, and I'm all good with that because I think that's happened this season. I think this season has, not bizarrely because it's a matter of normality now, has become not about this end game. Like, normally we're leading up to this end game, and I don't think this season has been that. I think this is another game in, a genuinely incredible season. I really, truly believe it's been an incredible event, that we've been through. It's been horrific, in many, many ways, but it's been glorious in many ways, I think. And it's, so I feel uncomfortable in this all going towards a moment of glory for 18. It feels like that is, if ever it should be shared, it's this season. I honestly think
unless it's Wigan, clearly.
No, I honestly don't mind. Like I truthfully don't mind because I don't think that anyone can be begrudged this trophy this year, and I think that time will assess this season as, without being dreadfully schmaltzy about it, that everybody won this season apart from Toronto.
So would you put an asterisk against the winners on Friday, or do you think they genuinely deserve the right to call themselves champions because of everything they've been through?
Do you think we need an asterisk? Do you think anyone's going to look back on this season and go, what was it happened that year? Like, we don't need an asterisk, do you know what I mean? The only way I would have insisted on an asterisk was if Warrington had won it, because I think that would have been hilarious. But at the same time, no, I don't think it needs an asterisk. I do think the champions are the champions, but I do think, I said it in my column, in fact, this month, where I do think whoever wins it has got to accept so much of this, more than usual, was in the lap of the gods. It's like so much of this was fluke, was things happening to other teams. We've not all played the same amount of games. It can't possibly be assessed as they did the best. They were, on form you can do it, but in terms of the actual logistics of the season and points and all that sort of thing, it was changed every week. It's just been an event, this. I'm growing to love it, to be honest. I think I'll miss it. I genuinely think I'll miss it.
You'd rather be in it than not. And I think your team have had a really, really interesting season because we've forgotten that obviously they had to build up to the World Club Challenge, gave a very creditable account of themselves against, at the time, one of the best teams we'd ever seen in the Roosters coming over. They then went into the lockdown, not in the greatest of form, because clearly there had to be some kind of a kickback from the World Club. But when they came out of it, they looked easily the best team of the bunch and adapted to the new rules probably better than anybody else. So there are positives to take out of the season.
Oh, absolutely. You know, we were certainly by far the best team. That was just blatantly obvious after lockdown. But pre-lockdown, we were blatantly by far one of the worst teams. And it was, you're right, it was the World Cup Challenge. That was my fear this week. If I for a moment accept the reality of Saints Wigan and go, well, old habits die hard. One of my fears was that game last week against Catalan really reminded me of the World Cup Challenge in terms of its ferocity and its the niggling in it and, all of that sort of thing. And I was worried we'd get bullied by Catalan. The saving grace of it for me was, I don't think they did bully us. I think they tried the very hardest. I thought it was actually quite a unsavoury performance and quite disappointing, really, from a professional team. But at the same time, the difference between that game and the World Cup Challenges, we hammered them in that game. On the scoreboard, we battered Catalan in that game. So we've got that confidence going in. The World Cup Challenge rocked Saints. Clearly, it was blatant that had happened. We were rocked. And, I think we lost against Huddersfield in a game that we shouldn't have lost, even though they had decent form. We lost against Cass, and we probably shouldn't have lost against Cass, but they're all personal battles going on there. And we weren't that impressive against Toronto the week after the World Cup Challenge. That felt like a bit of a reset. We're resetting now. And that didn't follow through. So, in all honesty, the lockdown was the best thing that could happen for Saints at that point, because it meant we could go, right, another pre-season, quick now, get back to that form again. But we're not, look, we got nilled by Warrington, didn't we, the week before or 2 weeks before? It's like, it was borderline. We've never been as good as people think we are, but we've never been as bad as people say we are when they say we're bad.
Yeah, there are some fans who are not happy with the way Christian Wolf has set up Saints this year as opposed to the swashbuckling Justin Holbrook team of last year. I do have half a hope now that if Saints do go on and win the grand final, they celebrate in the way they did when they won the League Leaders Shield a couple of years ago by just lifting up the trophy and going, yeah. But
it was already ours.
As you say, that break we all had. That's the last live game I saw was Castlewood versus Saints. Now seems to have reset St Helens in the way that Christian Wolf has been able to get his methods across to the players. The fans might not be wholly happy with the way they're playing, but they're in the grand final. As you say, they were so close to winning the League Leaders Shield as well.
Do you know what I thought? Well, again, then the rules changed, don't they? So, yeah, I think Louis said in Forty20 magazine, he said they thought they had 3 more weeks, and then suddenly they didn't. But you can't play like that, can you? You can't play with ifs and buts. I thought at the beginning of the season, I think it's interesting you say about Christian Wolf and the fans' attitude to Christian Wolf, because I watched the Warrington game where Warrington milled us. I watched that. I was out of the country and I watched it on my iPad, and I sat watching that game, like going, he's going to be no good. This isn't Saints. This is too aggressive. This is horrible. It was, that was another game where I'd never seen Saints play like that before. It was headshots. It was cheap. I think someone pulled a bandage off someone's head. It was really vile to watch as a match until the World Club Challenge. And then I sat in the ground watching that and went, oh, that's why he's got him playing like that. That's why he's got him roughed up and, ready for a scrap, because he knew this was coming. And he had to get him used to that. And they acquitted themselves well in the World Club Challenge. I'm not really one for celebrating when you don't win, but they did. They did acquit themselves well. And but for a few decisions or a few little daft missed opportunities, they'd have had that. And it would have been one of those World Club Challenges that was hard to win. Sometimes they're not.
One of the things you have got, though, in the typical St Helens tradition that makes them a lot of other people's second favourite team because of the way they play, is the most exciting back division in the competition. And I know other clubs could stake that claim, but in every position you've got a thrilling runner of the ball, someone who's able to maybe get you off your seat when the ball in their hand. From Lachlan Coote, who, but for Bevan French, would probably be the man of steel and the form fullback.
Bevan who?
Never heard of him. Tommy Makinson, who, again, will be remembered this season for all the wrong reasons, but when you look at his the ball out of defence are just ridiculous. Kevin Aguama, one of the silkiest runners that you could wish to see. A youngster of your choice, I would say Jack Wellesby's come of age this year, but clearly Josh Sim has replaced Mark Percival.
Also great. Yep.
And Regan Grace, when we're not even talking about the quality of halfbacks that give them the ball, but when those 5 are in possession, that's St Helens.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that that's not Percy Gunn, to be honest, because I'm very fond of Mark Percival. I think he's an exceptional player, and you know, there's always a great thing to have competition for places. I still would say that a fit Mark Percival is the first choice centre in the club, including Nguama, who I also think is fantastic. But there's something about Mark Percival, I think, that there's a genuine, real heart on display there. Or it might be that he just doesn't even, you know, he just throws himself in fully or whatever without any thought. But regardless of that, he's certainly a very committed player. He's a very exciting player to watch. He runs in similar to how A.D. Gardner ended up running in. He didn't when he first started, but he ended up slamming into the line. You know, there was no hesitation or nothing. There were other wingers that we've had who had that hesitation, but Percy didn't. So I would hope that Percy's, you know, still in the mix there, really, because he's had an awful luck with injuries, really. But you're right. I think it's the most balanced sort of back line, and including the halves as well. I think it's the most balanced we've been for many a season, to be honest, in terms of how it's shared out amongst people. You've got Regan Grace, who can have a moment of brilliance. I also think he's developed perhaps more than you'd notice this year, Regan Grace. I think his defence is really, really improved. And if you see, and it might be, as you say, Rich, because of the nature of the game and adapting to the new rules, but there've been more opportunities for Grace to go. There's a half a gap there, and he's gone. Which, you know, with a more sort of intense defence that's set, it's harder to do that. But because defences are set so rarely nowadays, it's rare that the defence is properly set across all 13 men. It's finding them little gaps, and he's just scoring. He's just every single time. So yeah, other than those flash moments, I think it's a very balanced back row. I think years ago, you had Barber at the fullback and that, and it was all just built around him. It was all like, well, he'll just do it at some point. You know, hopefully, like, you know, as long as he's still committed to us, he'll do it at some point. But now that is really shared, I think, amongst the backs. I think it is. I mean, it feels that way. It feels more controlled. Which sometimes leads to some of the excitement, though, doesn't it? That sometimes.
No, I'm not sure. I think that's just the nature of the beast. You've got to build on something, and I guess that's where it comes down to talking about arguably the 2 people that are going to get the most press. Certainly, obviously James Graham's final game, and you'll have seen his entire career. And if anybody can give him the right sort of eulogy, you certainly can. And James Rugby, who will go up to something like, is it 8th in the list of all-time appearances, and even though he's 104, is still as effective as he was when he was the man of steel in 2007 when he burst on the scene. Yeah,
he's like, again, I think, and it's it's become hack to say it now, but it's true. Roby goes unnoticed. I absolutely agree, by the way, with Paul McShane getting man of steel. I've got no issue with that at all. He's not been better than James Roby this year, and James Roby wasn't even in the shortlist. But Roby this year, particularly, has turned back the years like nobody's business. He's running from acting half again. He's breaking the tackle from acting half. He's making clean breaks in the line again. And he's like, as you say, what is he, 70 or something? He's like, he's piling through there. But it just doesn't get recognised. He'll only get recognised, James Roby, now retrospectively. It'll only be when we're in this situation that we are with Graham and Sean O'Loughlin now. When that moment comes, and may it never, but when it does, that's when James Roby will start getting the raps again that he deserves.
When they unveil his statue as they strategically withdraw Kieran Cunningham.
Cut the head off. Well, they must never withdraw it. Cut the head off. Well, people were calling for that, weren't they, at one point? He's been, along with Cunningham, along with Paul Wellens, they're your X Factor players. They're the ones who really do mean something to the club. But it might be because, you know, the one club men. So there's probably a degree of that where people respond to that commitment that they've made to the club until they become the coach. But you know, whilst they're playing, they respond to that. And I think that's probably the difference between him and Jammer in terms of, it was amazing to see James Graham back, and it's horrible that we didn't get to see it in person, you know. But at the same time, it's never going to have the impact it would have had if he'd just stayed at Saints. If he'd have been at Saints all this time and played how he's been playing in Australia, this would be a whole different thing. And I was thinking about that the other day with O'Loughlin, you know, being at Wigan all the time, and he's also retired. I thought, oh, he might have the edge on that. But then I thought, no, he's not played over here for all them years either, has he, really? But for a couple of finals. So you know, I think there's a weird thing with that. But, you know, outside of Saints and outside of St Helens, just as a general thing, James Graham's been something insane, really, in every sense of the word.
I forgot to mention when Phil was on Monday talking about Sean O'Loughlin, and he said that no one's got a bad word to say about him. And I thought, well, Saints fans will, obviously. But the best thing on when he's in retirement was announced was the Wakefield fans piping up to say he got away with taking Chris Anakin's head off a few years ago. Because the disciplinary said, oh, he's got a great character, so he doesn't get a ban, so it's all right. Because that's what it's all about. It's all about whining people.
He's been a high-shot merchant. He has been a high-shot merchant his whole career. That's true. He's an amazing player, but you can't... let's have a look at when he showed these compilation clips, you know, with him retiring. Let's have a proper look at that. Do one of them just tackling. See how many tackles you can get below the chest.
Some would say that's the Wigan way, but obviously I wouldn't, and Phil wouldn't. But you can say that.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Well, it is, isn't it? You know, that aggression is. But I'm not averse to a degree of aggression. Obviously, I'm not averse to that. I am averse to it when I was sickened by that game last week. Like, I found it really upsetting.
Well, it was.
I just thought it was.
You know, we've spent the last few months saying how great Catalans are for, you know, and the amount of money they've spent coming over week in, week out. Yeah. And it's almost, you don't want to take anything away from them, but you're right, that performance was disgraceful. Some of the reaction to the bans for Tompkins and McIlaurin was disgraceful. I mean, as I said, I thought Tompkins' statement was ridiculous. And that was from a perspective of, if I was working for a club, I wouldn't want someone coming out and making a statement which A, says the disciplinary isn't worth what it's written on, and B, is pretty much blaming the guy who, I'm trying to think of the word, I don't want to...
Was the victim.
That's. I'm always glad Phil's here to keep me on the straight and narrow. I thought, you know, sometimes it's best to say nothing and just... Yeah. If he hadn't have made that statement, I'm not saying it would have blown over straight away. And of course, as Phil Wilkinson pointed out on Twitter to me, you know, the first time he's put up before the press next year, everyone will ask him about it. But it would have gone quiet for a while. He just stoked the flames, and I thought it was a shame for Catalans, with all the good work they've done this year, that they kind of undid it a little. And, you know, in the eyes of many supporters, anything bad, that's it. All the good work is thrown away. And in that performance and the performance the week before, they may have lost some of that credit.
I agree, and I think that if you compare it to the Makerton incident, which was equally abhorrent, by the way, I'm not making any defence of that at all, but that was how that was dealt with. It was something that happened, drew a line under it. There was no like, well, you know, oh come on, that didn't mean to do. It's like, look, it's there, it's blatant. You can't get away with that, and you shouldn't get away with that, And really, it's not been forgotten, but that has now just calmed and settled. I think what my issue with Catalan was last week is there was just something a bit not classy about it. You know what I mean? There was just something a bit, like you say, they've spent so much money doing this. I mean, if I was Gouache, I'd be like, have you got any clue how much I've paid for you to even play that game? And you go out and do that. And similarly, by the way, both losers in the semis this year, both of them, I think, lost definitively because of attitude. So Catalan lost because they came for a fight, and they seemed to have no interest in playing rugby once it was out of their grasp. And Hull lost in that one moment Well, they were all like 10-year-olds. Do you know what I mean? Patting people on the head.
As we like to call it, the Benny Hill moment.
It wasn't that insane. That was like, and I sat watching it go, you've literally just lost this game. Well, because you've shown you've got no cool about you at all.
This is a problem I have with social media, and it kind of goes into the Man of Steel thing, which I'll mention in a minute, but the reaction to Chris Kendall being announced as the referee on Friday is ridiculous, because there's only so many referees they can pick from, right? And they're all what they are, right? So I'm not saying they're all perfect, because of course they're not. But everyone who criticises the referee for missing this and missing that, but none of the players go on social media and say, well, he's a Burke for tapping him on the head, and he's an idiot for making a high shot, and he shouldn't have stuck his finger up his backside. It's too easy to blame the referees. It's too easy. It's too easy to send abuse to Paul McShane for deigning to win an award when they're not going to tweet saying Ellery Hanley's an idiot for picking him in the first place. Ellery Hanley's
how dare he?
Yeah, Ellery Hanley's Paul McShane.
Well, I should emphasise, as I said before, I absolutely consider McShane a worthy winner of that award. Like, I really do. I'm just talking about on pure game skills. That's at Rugby every time. But I do think credit where it's due. I think the Man of Steel award, it's great that it went to somebody that isn't in two of the final teams. I think the dream team was perfectly balanced. We all know there's, arguments in every position on the dream team. There certainly is. But that dream team was like, oh, isn't that nice? That's like everyone, pretty much, give or take. That's everyone in there, and it's a nice representation of the entire league.
You can tell Richard. I'm argumentative, you can tell.
I just want to back to the appointment of the referee, because I know that you've written some really, really incisive columns, particularly this year, about how we should approach the season as fans, and that because of the exceptional circumstances, we shouldn't ever be looking to apportion blame on players whose load has been above and beyond, and welfare was taken out of the equation when at one point we prized it. We shouldn't be overcritical of coaches because they've had no training time. And you'd feel the same about referees as well. This game on Friday is not going to be determined by the choice of the referee, is it?
It's really not. And do you know what? I've got less of an issue if, like in the Challenge Cup last year. So there was that moment everyone had to go at Hicks and all that sort of thing. I've less issue with that, really. It got ludicrous, but I've got less issue with that because it's actually about a defining moment. It's about something where you go, no, why did you not go to the screen? Whatever it is. But I think 5 or 6 days before the final, to be already shouting at the ref is utterly counterproductive, first off. Because if there is this influence you say there is, that they portray it as, oh, they're all in so-and-so's pocket or whatever. If that's true, then you've just guaranteed the decisions won't go in your favour. Because you're the fans who are all shouting at him. Of course he's then going to give benefits to the doubt to the other team. I don't think he'd do that. I don't think Kendall's that sort of ref at all. I don't think there is that sort of ref. I don't think that's a thing. I don't. So I think to preemptively do that, all that does is it shows you up as bottlers, really. It shows you up as you're making excuses before it starts. And I don't think any Saints fan at the minute should be bottling it for this week. Because I think we should go in, after that game last week, we should go in with absolute confidence. If it's just about the rugby, why would you not be confident? As you say, we've been the best team of the season overall, really, in terms of performances and the points we've put on people and all that, and the skill on display. We've been far and away the best team. So why would you start making excuses before a ball's been kicked? Blaming the ref when it's not even kicked off? It's crazy.
We've mentioned James Graham's imminent retirement, but there are two other players who are absolutely integral to St Helens. They embody the Saints way. They've had a massive influence while I've been there. One in particular, Zeb Taylor, who a couple of tries this season with inside balls have just been exquisite. And obviously Don Peyroux, who probably hasn't had as much game time in the last year that he would have liked, but has made an impact every time he's come off the bench. Again, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that it's their last game as well in the famous Red V.
Yeah. Well, there's other players departing as well that aren't going to be in the squad, isn't there? But it's Peyroux's been a weird one this year, I think, because I presumed he was injured. Was my presumption. I thought he was just injured. That's why he wasn't in, when we came back from lockdown. I presumed that was what was going on. I think perhaps, you could argue it's been a bit of a waste to not playing so much, but you could also counter-argue, yeah, but look, who would you take out to put him in? You know, given how well the kids, quote unquote, are playing, and so like you've got James Bentley there, James Bentley, like Bateman, I know he said. You know, he's really come into his own for a really young player. The confidence that he's showing, and I have it on good authority that part of the reason Catalan was so wound up was him. From somebody that was in the ground, said that he was at them all night. So, you know, you wonder where you could make a space. You know, Paolo, it was horrible when they announced Paolo was going, and there was a load of fans supposedly just going rubbish signing, waste the money and all that. It's like, oh, really? Even now you're doing that? It's like, it's not a rubbish signing at all. It's just not been able to break into that team because the people in that team have been so good. He'd have walked into many another team in Super League. Like, he certainly would have done. So it's not, I don't think it's fair to say that people haven't done so well. And don't forget Peyru, first season he was here, when Cunningham signed him, they were calling for his head that first season. You know, all the Saints, you know, all the Saints fans was giving it, he's no good, he's not, you know, really impatient with him. But you're right, he's 10.
Like they were with Matt Gidley when he wasn't his predecessor, Jamie Lyon. And it turned out to be quite good, that Gidley.
But it wasn't quite as bad with Gidley, I don't think. I think there was a bit of benefit of the doubt that we weren't going to get the same again. Similarly, Lachlan Coo, in that I think there was an acceptance, this isn't going to be Ben Barber. And I called it, by the way, in my article. If you go back through your back issues, I called it. I said, he's not going to be Ben Barber, but he's going to bring balance to that back line. You know, he's far better all-round player, if not, you know, having his moments of glory that are individual. I don't know, Taya, I thought about this in the shower the other day. I was thinking about it.
You do?
Well, you know, it was for who left Saints for Taya to come in. And at the time it was like, I can't believe that we've not done everything we can do to keep Greenwood at Saints. You know, it was, I remember my dad saying, and my dad's away now, but I remember my dad saying, that's ridiculous if let him go, ridiculous. And if you look at them both now, you'd go, I'll have Taya every day of the week. You know, there was all talk of like, oh, he's too old, and we had this young lad who's gone out. And Greenwood's had his glory days too, and will continue to do so. He's a great player if he keeps his head. But I'm still glad we had Zeb Taya in that time. I think he's been fantastic. He really has, as you say. He's been a brilliant servant to not just the club, but the game, you know.
Thanks to the brilliant editing skills that I possess. People won't realise that we ran out of time on Monday with Phil Wilkinson. Now, the time is ticking in front of me because I'm too cheap to pay for a Zoom account because, you know we're on a shoestring, this YouTube channel, social media.
And you're on dial-up as well.
Well, that's Wakefield for you, see. I mean, you Saints fans, really, you know, with your success for the last however many years, you don't know what it's like to finish, you know, near the bottom of the table, and occasionally, you know, I'm still cursing the fact that, you know, Saints, because Scott Griggs didn't kick the ball over the Celebrity Squares stand, not waiting to run for the top four a few years ago, because I remain bitter about these things. But we talked, and
then Lomax scored that lovely try. Do you remember that lovely try that he scored to win it?
Well,
that must have been horrible
because I was cursing very bad words. Which we know plenty of in Wakefield. We've mentioned fans a lot. I mean, as I say, I haven't been to a game since the game before lockdown with the Cass and St Helens much. I don't know if I've missed going to games much because I'm so used to working at them. It's not quite the same atmosphere, and you're not in the same frame of mind. But how have you missed the whole game day experience? It's a social thing. It's not just about watching 80 minutes of rugby. It's the social aspect of the game.
Well, no, because of my involvement that I treasure with 4020 magazine, I tend to be in the press box under the pretense of working. So
I mean, that's what I'll be doing next year. I mean, I have to say that.
Yeah, you know, the World Cup challenge was
the biggest stuff in rugby league. Who isn't going to be writing for 4020 magazine?
Yeah, but have I missed it? I have missed it. Of course, I've missed it. But I feel like the social thing's not really a thing so much for me. I do go, like when I don't go on a freebie or whatever. I'll go, and I do work, by the way. That's only pretend, but I am shouting and screaming while I'm there. The rest of the press box look at me. It's like, well, I do support them. I can't do anything about that. But I go with mates and stuff, and my partner, and we go with my other friend Michael and things, and it's a nice experience to go. But I do. How can you? None of us three would be sat here now if we didn't know what it was like. We know what that's like, so we know that's something that's part of your life and it's part of your growing up and stuff. And I was introduced to Saints by my dad, and my dad died earlier in the year, right before the lockdown, just before it. And to be honest, on a personal note, I was actually feeling a bit like, don't fancy it. Don't fancy Saints at the minute. It was a bit too emotive for me. It was getting a bit much. And I was kind of forced to go to my dad was in Warrington Hospital in his final hours, and I was forced to go to Warrington's ground to see the Toronto game because everyone was going, Ida wanted you to go. Ida wanted you to go. And I was like, all right, I'll go there. I was literally just down the road as he's breathing his last and stuff. And it was like, I felt that night, obviously very emotional, but when I was seeing dads with their kids and things like that, it was like, okay, circle of life, this sort of thing. I was very philosophical about it, but I did feel like I don't want to be around this too much just for the minute. So it seems for everyone at St Helens, that it came at a good time for various reasons, for the team and for the Speckies. But I am at a point now where I'm like, right, I'm ready for the off season, and I'm ready for whatever happens next year, however it happens, that we're like, right, we're set. Like the lockdown with Saints getting great again, it's like, right, we're set. We can approach next season now as a movement of rugby league. We can approach this now going, right, there's nothing that can overcome this game. There's nothing that can actually ruin it, or destroy it rather, because as a movement, we've shown that we can do it. Stupid decisions get made constantly, as we know, as we discussed with Toronto and all the rest of it. But as a movement of rugby league, we've come through this. They're only giving mortgage to people at the moment whose businesses have survived the lockdown. Our business has survived the lockdown, and it's insane that it has. That's bonkers that it has. So credit where it's due to everyone, including the refs. That's where it's the thing we were discussing earlier on. It's quite bad nature, isn't it?
And before you reset your clock for 2021, you've got one game to watch. We need a picture of how you're going to be watching this. Are you going to be dancing around your living room? Are there going to be cans of beer? Will there be champagne on ice? How can we visualise you watching your team play in the biggest game of the year, but you not being there?
I start very studious. So this is how I start. So I start very calm, just watching the game. That's how it begins. And I watched, and there could be 2 or 3 tries before I even react. I'll give a clap, whatever, if we get over the line, but I'm quite studious. And that, last week with the Catalan game, you said earlier on, Rich, about the words you were saying when Lomax scored that try. The words I was saying about that Catalan team at that point was have that. It was really, I do get passionate about it. It's the only time I ever drop my guard, actually, watching rugby. It's the only time it ever goes completely. I'm not aware of myself. So I would hope I'll have one of them, as a final hurrah for this season. But I'm honestly all right with this, however it goes. I really am. I'm all right with it. Because I do, hand on heart, believe it's not about this one game this season. It's not about champions this season.
You're very professional because you've wrapped everything up. We've gone round in a full circle there.
Yeah, but you haven't told us how you're going to win it and who's going to be the Lance Todd Trophy winner.
Harry Sunderland.
We're going to win it.
Sorry, Harry Sunderland. I'm not allowed to say the words Harry Sunderland.
Roy Francis.
Should be Roy Francis.
Well, we're going to win it because we're a better team. It's just simple that. The reason I think Saints will win it is because from last week again, is Wigan's tactic when they played us the other week was very much to bully us, and we allowed ourselves to get bullied. That was dead straightforward. We didn't stand up to it enough. After last week, we're now ready for that fight. We're ready for people trying that on, and we've proven last week we can put big numbers on you if you do that. If you're not concentrating on your game and trying to take people's heads off, we'll put big numbers on you. So that's how I would see Saints winning it, is to just actually keep their cool, but muscle up to it as well. And in terms of the man of the match, you could toss a coin, couldn't you? Given the balance in that Saints team, it's not. You know, you'd have your. Well, if Sky are doing it, then it'd be Lachlan Coote, won't it? But
Well,
or Roby having a good day.
I think if the 4020 mob are sticking together, it's got to be Louis coming off the bench and turning the game.
I'd love him to. Isn't he thick?
I was going to use the word fearless, but you know.
No, but he is. He's thick as anything, but he's one of the loveliest men in the whole world. Do you know what I mean? He's so lovely. He really is. And he was really lovely when my dad died as well. He was, like, on a personal level, he really was that night, because we went down to Saints the week after without my dad. And Louis was lovely that night. I've all the time in the world for him. I like that he winds people up, and so does he, obviously.
I thought you meant...
So, yeah, I'd love him to win it.
Love it. Thick, the modern sense of the word, THICC, that the young people use.
No, I think he's thick.
We've got less than a minute. Promote whatever you want to promote.
I've nothing. Everything's on hold. I had a film come out in March, so that tells you what use is that to anyone. So no, I've nothing. I do. There's no crossover in terms of my audience. I could do Patreon, but you wouldn't like it. It's not. There's hardly any rugby on it ever, so that'd be no good to you. The film's called The Parapod Movie, and that's going to be on digital stuff next year. But again, there's no rugby crossover. I've got a Saint scarf on during some of it, but other than that.
Well, that counts. Ian, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to try and wrap this up before it all crashes. We'll be back at some point. Ian, it's been a pleasure. Phil, enjoy your Zoom meeting you've got later. And we'll be back after the grand final here on 4020, not live.